What's up, guys? Levi here. So, this is my review of WWE's Clash in Italy. Now, I will start overall by saying that my expectations for this pay per view were kind of low, and based on that, you'd think that I would have enjoyed it a lot more than I did, but unfortunately, I just felt like they got a lot wrong with it. So, the opening match was Gunther versus Cody Rhodes. Now, in my opinion, one of the things that really held back this match for me, it should have been a great match, but it was just knowing that the writers and the bookers had basically put themselves into a bit of a corner here because you've got Cody Rhodes, who they clearly don't want to take the title off anytime soon, going up against somebody who really should have been getting this monster push. You know, he's retired what Goldberg, John Cena, AJ Styles. You know, this guy should be booked like peak Brock Lesnar was. So I think that putting him into a title match, which a lot of people will have known that he wasn't going to win, I think that kind of devalues Gunther a little bit, which is a shame because I know Gunther recently has become more of a Marmite character. A lot of people think that he's really good and likes his character of believing that wrestling is a sacred sport. But then there's a lot of people who more and more recently are, coming out and saying that, oh, Gunther's just boring. The match overall, it was a decent match. I'll give them that. But as I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, how are they going to do this to make both people look strong? And when you're at that point of thinking about it, it kind of devalued the match for me. Obviously, we got to the end of the match. Cody hit the crossroads on Gunther. Gunther had his foot underneath the rope, but he was still pinned for 3 anyway. Which, I guess it didn't make Gunther look weak, but I kind of wish as well that they didn't have such a screwy sort of ending, a shenanigan sort of ending. I thought it'd have been better if they'd have had somebody come in and interfere, cause a DQ. You could have had Randy Orton come back. I don't know if he's fully fit yet to do that. They could have had CM Punk come back and set up this, what is going to be an eventual rivalry with Cody. Could have had Royce Keys come in and basically cause a non-finish, but yeah, the match overall, it was good, but I just knew what was coming. I knew that that Cody wasn't going to lose his title, but they had to do it in a way that still made Gunther look strong. In my opinion, they could have saved this match for a little further down the line. They could have had Gunther just tear through the roster and earn his way into it, because then that would have made Cody look more like the underdog at that point. And if Cody then won at that point, say they had this match at SummerSlam, for example, I think it would have just meant a lot more. Overall, though, I'd give the match probably like a 4 out of 5. Like I said, the match itself was good. The only thing that stopped it from being a 5 for me was the finish of it. Then we had Rhea Ripley versus Jade Cargill. I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of checked out for this match. Like, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Rhea Ripley. I think she could very well be the face of the company. But this rivalry with Jade Cargill, it's just not been it. Even when they were having their match at WrestleMania, I just couldn't get invested into it, because I think WWE overall have mishandled Jade Cargill. Like, Jade Cargill won the women's title off of Tiffany Stratton, and she barely, if ever, defended that title at all until it got to WrestleMania, and then Rhea Ripley beat her for it. To me, it just kind of felt like it. Not only did it devalue Jade Cargill as a character who should be, one of the monster heels of the women's division, it kind of devalued the women's title as well. It's all well and that being a champion, but if you're never going to defend it, in my opinion, that just kind of makes you a bit more of a paper champion. Plus, I had to go through, Brock Lesnar holding the title and then just never showing up, and similar with Roman Reigns when he had that 4-year title reign. So I might be a bit more biased to when people hold the title and then just never defend it. You know, they really need to bring back that rule where you have to defend your title every 30 days, because it would just make things a lot more interesting. You know, it would mean that these people that you're going to put the title on, you need to think about how much they're going to be there going forward. But the match was okay. You know, like, there was nothing really special. Obviously, they had B-Fab and Michin come in, which you could see that coming a mile off. The one thing though that had me shouting at the screen though was when Rhea went to pin Jade Cargill and B-Fab was supposed to grab Jade Cargill's leg and put it on the rope, and she completely fucking missed it. It's like, how can you miss that? Like, you have to grab somebody's leg and just put it onto the rope. I get accidents can happen, but that just really wound me up. Charlotte showing up was... It wasn't a surprise, but it was good to see, you know, because obviously Jade had, you know, been Alexa previously. It just sort of felt good seeing Charlotte help Rhea Ripley win. I think that in comparison to, like a year ago when Charlotte was facing Tiffany Stratton, I think Charlotte's character development in that time has really gone well. I think pairing her up with Alexa Bliss was probably the best thing that could have happened for her. It's really gotten her over as a babyface. Now, it could set up a potential Charlotte versus Rhea Ripley match at some point, because obviously Charlotte helped Rhea win this match, whilst also avenging what happened to Alexa. But yeah, overall, I'd probably give the match 3 out of 5. Again, you could just see what was going to happen, and for me, that's kind of what really dragged it down. Then after that, Brock Lesnar, Obafemi. The match that really did not need to fucking happen, but for some reason it did. Now, a lot of people were hoping that Oba was going to demolish Brock Lesnar again, just really sell Oba as, like, you know, he is really the next big thing. I knew what was going to happen. I knew that they were going to do the 1-all thing, and then they were going to have the tiebreaker somewhere down the line. But the match lasted 6 minutes. In that 6 minutes, Obafemi got hit with 7 F5s. You know, it took 3 to beat the streak. If anything, it really just goes to show how finishing moves just don't mean shit now. Like, when you're hitting that many finishers in a match, you know, it just completely devalues the point of having a finisher at this point. Because, like, it's not just Brock Lesnar matches. It's like a lot of matches have happened in the past where it's just like, okay, we're just going to spam our finishers, and when we think we've satisfied the crowd enough, we'll do the pin. But as soon as the match started and Brock just went straight at Oba, I was just like, yeah, this is definitely not going to go well. Like I said, 7 F5s. You know, I think Oba hit 1 fall from grace. My main issues with this is that Brock didn't need to have this retirement angle at WrestleMania. They could have easily just had Brock go off for a couple of months, lick his wounds, and then he could have had him come back during the King of the Ring. You know, Obafemi's just going through everybody at King of the Ring. They could have done it in the final. They could have done it very earlier on, where Brock just comes in, hits Oba with an F5, and then gives, you know, Oba's opponent the pin. And then that could have set up, you know, match 2. It could have set up the SummerSlam match, which would have been Brock Lesnar's retirement match then. When Brock did the retirement angle, I was saying to myself, he's not retiring. He's going to be back. But my main issue with this is that they have somebody in Obafemi who absolutely destroyed Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. And then what have they done with Oba since then? They have been doing this open challenge where he's essentially just beating up jobbers. You have Brock Lesnar come back, absolutely destroy him, and then again he destroys him in a match. My concern here is that they might be devaluing Obafemi. They had this match at WrestleMania to create a moment, and they just didn't capitalize on it like they should have. They could have had Oba do a feud with, you know, Rusev. They could have had him do a feud with Omos. You know, could have brought Omos back to the company for a little bit and had them two feuded. You know, they could have had Oba turn heel after Mania, and he's just squashing through talent, but then you have like these smaller baby faces that you would be really rooting for, this David and Goliath feeling. But instead they had over squash Lesnar, and then just this open challenge that didn't mean anything, and then Brock squashing over at Clash in Italy. Yeah, you could make the argument that he took 7 F5s to do the job, like this makes Oba look strong, but in terms of things going forward, like where are they going to go with this? Have they potentially just really put the brakes on Obafemi's push? I don't know, but I just remember watching this match, and then when I saw what was just happening, I was just shouting at the TV screen, just end the fucking match already, I'm done. Overall, I would give this match a 1 out of 5. It was just a finish fest. 7 F5s, a fall from Grace, and then a pinfall. And then the next match, we had Sol Ruca versus Becky Lynch for the Intercontinental Championship. Again, this is just another match I wasn't interested in. I really do like Sol Ruca. I think she's really talented. She's got all the potential in the world to eventually become a women's world champion. But her booking since she's joined the main roster has been very questionable. It's just shown her going on a bit of a losing streak, and then she finally got a win, but then it was just because Becky caused a DQ. It's great that Sol Ruca's an Intercontinental champion, but it just doesn't feel very convincing because she's not gotten those wins under her belt to justify that. It just very much gives off this story of, yeah, Sol Ruca won, but it was a lucky win. If they'd have had Sol Ruca versus Becky Lynch, Becky beat her, and then you have Sol Ruca be told she's at the back of the line now, she's going to have to work her way up. And then she could have done that. She could have gotten some wins under her belt. She could have become this potential threat to Becky where Becky's like kind of scared of her. Again, it's just bad booking in my opinion. The match itself was good. It was good to see Sol finally hit the Soul Snatcher and not on Jessica Carr. Speaking of which, this Jessica Carr Becky situation, like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, is this going to be a match, or is this just going to be a bunch of tension for months until nothing happens? Like I said, it's good to see Sol with the title, but I just feel like she could have been booked a lot better so that she could have actually, earned this win. Overall, I'd probably give this a 3 out of 5. I don't know if I'm being a bit too harsh for that one, but... And then we had Roman Reigns versus Jacob Fatu. The issue is, with having Roman just win a title at WrestleMania a couple of months ago, is that whoever his first challenger is, they ain't winning. WWE are never going to pull off any, shock victories or anything like that. So, when Jacob Fatu initially came out as Roman's challenger, I was just a bit like, okay, I mean, they could have good matches, but Jacob definitely is not winning, but I do like the development of Jacob Fatu's character. I like that he's become like a little bit more unhinged, and I like that he's added the tongue and death grip to his arsenal as well, and that Roman doesn't agree with it, because Roman believes that the tongue and death grip is something that should be used as like a last resort and you never use it on family. I do like that part of the story. But again, it's just hard to get behind something when you know who the winner is definitely going to be. Would I mind seeing Jacob Fatu as a world champion? Absolutely not. He's definitely going to be a world champion one day. Having him challenge Roman so soon after Mania, you just knew what was going to happen. It's going to happen for quite a while as well. This isn't going to be a short title reign for Roman. This isn't going to be something... I don't think he'll lose it at SummerSlam. I think this is going to be another long-run championship reign for Roman. I do like the development, though, that Roman doesn't need help to win. Like, ever since Roman got the Usos back on his side, I was waiting for the Usos at Mania to come down and screw Punk out of the title somehow. Again, at Backlash, I was waiting for the Usos to come out and screw Jacob. And again, last night at Clash in Italy, I was waiting for the Usos to come out, especially with it being a tribal combat match. But it never happens, so I do like that Roman is proving that he can do it on his own. And I liked the spot where Roman basically injured Jacob's hand, because that meant that Jacob couldn't do the tongue and death grip properly. And it's always cool to see Jacob do his spots where a move hasn't landed on him and he's just, doing his shaking thing. I liked that towards the end of the match, but again, you just knew that Jacob wasn't winning. For me, that match was probably match of the night. I don't think it's worthy of a 5, but I would definitely give it a 4, maybe a 4.5. Obviously, though, now we've got Jacob as part of the bloodline, because Jacob now has to fall in line. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the MFTs. I don't know if they're teasing something with the MFTs in the bloodline going forward. I feel like that's ground we've already treaded, though. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see going forward how Jacob fits into the bloodline. Hopefully he won't be, cooked by, Jay or Jimmy. But going forward from this pay-per-view, I just don't know what the direction is. It's like, where does Obafemi go from here? He's just been squashed by Brock Lesnar. Realistically, he should have just stayed retired. They're probably going to keep going with this Jade versus Rhea feud, which... just end the feud already. It's just not hitting. I think the only viable stories that you could take away from this pay-per-view is the Cody versus Gunther thing, because you could have Gunther say that he's definitely owed a rematch now because his foot was under the ropes. He technically shouldn't have lost that match. But again, it's one of those things, it only further puts WWE into a corner, because again, they don't want to take the title off Cody Rhodes, that's clear. But then they don't want to make Gunther look weak in losing. Like I said, they should have kept Cody versus Gunther for, a later time. But overall, I would probably give Clash in Italy, I'd probably give it a 3 out of 5. It was too predictable, and even some of the things that happened that I could see coming. I could see the screwy finish between Cody and Gunther. I could see Sol getting the win, even though she had no wins under her belt to kind of justify it. I could see Brock, putting things 1-1 so they can have their rubber match down the line. It was just too predictable. Now, I did watch the AAA show as well. That show was so much better. El Grande Americano versus the OG El Grande Americano, that match cooked. So Clash in Italy had a lot to live up to based on that pay-per-view the previous night. I don't think it lived up to it. What I will say, though, is that the fans in Italy absolutely knocked out the park. They were chanting all night. They were humming along to people's entrance songs. It very much felt like a Clash in Paris crowd, or a Backlash France crowd. I would probably say that the France crowds were a lot better, but still, I think that the crowd for Clash in Italy definitely made the show. But yeah, see where it goes from there, and hopefully there can be some improvements made to storytelling, because it's just getting a bit difficult now to watch when you know what's happening and you know how it's going to happen. I think there definitely needs to be some sort of shake-up in the creative department or the writer's room, because there's just no direction with storytelling. It's just we'll put these two in a feud and we'll just figure out the story. It very much feels like that. Whereas when you think back to wrestling back in the day, you had stories behind it, you had blood feuds, and it's just nothing feels like it anymore. You had the El Grande match on Saturday that had a whole feud behind it that was a blood feud. You had things like Drew versus CM Punk, which felt like a feud. You could feel the hatred between those two. Same with Seth and CM Punk. You could feel the hatred between those two. You had the story of Cody Rhodes finally winning the world title. They are capable of doing it. It's just they're just not putting enough focus onto storytelling. It just feels very much like they're after creating moments a lot more. Creating moments provides that more viral interaction. It's going to get a lot more clicks, it's going to get a lot more views. In the long term, if they were able to create more personal stories, I think that's where the company could then really succeed. They could, they could have their cake and eat it too. They could create these well thought out stories. They could create blood feuds that would then result in viral moments. But yeah, I think I'll leave it there. And yeah, if anybody has any opinions on the pay per view, sound off in the comments. And yeah, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.